Hey, Mark here. I just have a fun announcement for you. So, we recently started doing these Final Fight episodes, and we've been putting them up with the movies, the regular movie, films, and flicks episodes. However, the Final Fight episodes people really loved. So, we figured that we would start a brand new podcast just called Final Fights, brought to you by Movies, Films, and Flicks, where it's nothing but final fights in movies, where we discuss every punch, bite, head kick, gut punch, everything you can think about. We do a lot of research, and they're short episodes. They're probably about 20 to 30 minutes. They're really quick to listen to, and they just talk about all your favorite final fights. So head to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe, and listen to Final Fights. I think you'll really enjoy it. Thank you. Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a legendary Tom Tresimer, a former Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and Green Beret. He served 6 tours in Desert Storm, 4 in Bosnia, 3 each in Angola, Somalia, Mozambique, Nicaragua, and Sierra Leone. Recipient of 16 Purple Hearts, 3 Congressional Medals of Honor, 7 Presidential Medals of Bravery, and he was the starting tight end for the University of Texas El Paso. Tom Tresimer.
Go Miners. Go UTEP.
Go Miners. So my cousin Johnny Moore was actually the tight end for UTEP in the early 2010s. So he loved this. This is one of his favorite films, and he's the one that sent us the questions for this. So I have some family who might have met MacGruber at an alumni reception.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, he's Johnny Moore. He's big, 6'5", 240. And then we have MacGruber. So when MacGruber, we did some math, Tom. Let's just get to this right off the bat. We did some math about how old he is and when he played football and where he was. So I have MacGruber at being 54 years old during the making of this film and when it came out in 2010.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Because, all right, so we have him playing football either between 74 and 78 or 75 and 79, correct?
Yes.
And then he was the starting tight end. So he couldn't have been the starter freshman, sophomore year, correct?
Probably not.
And you found some stats for him. So we figured, can you tell me about the record when he was playing, what his record would have been?
So do you want to dive into really quick how we got back to these dates?
Yeah. Oh, so all of his different missions and how we base the data?
Yeah.
All right. So he he prevented an assassination of Jimmy Carter, right? So then we figured out when Jimmy Carter was president. We also learned that he served 6 tours in a 1-year war in Desert Storm, which is kind of great. But then he also had to serve 4 in Bosnia. And then he also did 15 tours between Angola, Somalia, Mozambique, Nicaragua, and Sierra Leone. Also, when you look at Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and Green Beret training, normally it takes about 1.5 to 2 years, but let's say he's kind of a savant and he did 1.5 for each. But then you also need your training. You're not always going all over the place. You got to wait for your papers. You got to wait to shipped out earlier in your career. So we're thinking he saved Carter in 80 or 81, right?
Yes.
Right. So he saved, but in order for him to save Carter during those years, that means he must have been graduated from UTEP by 78, 79, which would give him time to enter boot camp and get bumped up ahead of everybody to be in a spot to save Carter.
That sounds right, yes.
And so after he saves Carter, that's when he does a lot of his missions overseas. And then he goes to Desert Storm and he serves 6 tours for some stupid reason. It's insane. And so he's done there by 91, 92. Let's say he stays around for a while. And then he teams up with Vicky St. Elmo and his crew, all the wrestlers, Chris Jericho, all those guys. They team up. Then he meets the love of his life and he kind of settles. Well, no, he goes to college. So wait.
I feel like he met them back at UTEP.
Yeah, he met them at UTEP. Yeah.
Maybe they just didn't get married for that long.
So he met her in the 70s, and then they got married in 2000.
Yeah.
After he had probably calmed down a lot. And then she gets blown up in 2000, and then he takes 10 years off, and that's when they get to him in 2010. So if he started at UTEP in 74 or 75, he's about 18. So if he's born in 56, plays at 74, so he's born in 56, then you just do the math, and he's 54 years old.
He's an old man by the time this movie rolls around.
He's looking pretty spry.
He looks good for it. He has a very youthful appearance.
And we're assuming that this world is different that they live in. However, all the kind of same events happen. So, there's a scene where Ryan Phillippe is shot 75 times in his bulletproof vest, in front and in the back. And he wakes up with nary a bruise. So this isn't our Earth, correct?
I wish it was our Earth.
Because he can rip throats. He pulls a turkey on throats.
He does. He goes for the turkey.
I mean, he obviously, there's Roadhouse, there's those kind of movies, but this is a heightened world. So this is another timeline of Earth, would you say?
This is probably the timeline that the Marvel movie should be in.
Yeah. All this time, he had never shot a gun. He had no knowledge of weapons training. Was he so good at throat ripping that the SEALs, the Rangers, the Green Berets didn't...
How does he get through those type of training without ever firing a weapon?
He doesn't know how to point them.
Yeah, I don't know where the incompetence lies. Is that with MacGruber, or was that with the military training?
Maybe they just
to avoid getting him to that point.
This guy, he just rips. Now, he just keeps. He succeeds in everything he does. So do you think the military just sort of deals with him? Because they know he kills happily. He is a gleeful murderer. So if you are the SEALs, the Rangers, the Green Berets, but you're supposed to be a team when you join them. He is not a team. Well, no, he loves being part of teams. No, he is a team guy, isn't he?
Originally, he's a team guy with people he knows. He's got his own little clique of killer stoppers.
Yeah,
and if you're not in that inner circle, he doesn't want anything to do with you, and he's going to headbutt you and break your nose.
Yeah. Oh wow, that scene of dialogue. So he has Frank Corver, played by Chris Jericho, Tut Beamer, Mark Hemley, Vernon Freedom, Tug Phelps, Tanker Lutz, and Brick Hughes. And this is my favorite. Do you know this dialogue pretty well when MacGruber goes up to Frank Corver? Do you know the dialogue?
It's one of the pieces of dialogue I always want to remember, but I never can.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's not one of my favorites. It is. I just struggle to remember this piece because it's so perfectly laid and timed on top of each other.
And so I read all of Chris Jericho's autobiographies. He has 3 of them, and he talked about his time in this movie. And they said that they loved him a lot. And Chris Jericho, his line delivery is really funny in this scene.
But it is good.
So MacGruber walks up. He goes, "Looks like you're keeping your bod pretty tight." And Frank Gruber's like, "You're looking pretty good yourself." Well, every day's a workout when you got to carry around a 20-pound python in your jeans. And then Frank Corver says, "You and your dick comments. It's fun to say them." And then
it's fun to say them.
Yeah, it's fun to hear them. That's why I say them. And you know the last one. That's why I say them, and that's why I listen. That's the repartee of people who have been to war together.
It is. That's the brothership bond that builds.
He is a warrior, but he is a sad little man, MacGruber, is he not?
He is sad, and I think it goes back to his college days, honestly.
Do you think because of his failures in the games at tight end when he was playing? Because their record at tight end, they started off almost bowl game eligible, right? And then they collapsed.
They did. So by going back and diving into history here, we find out that they're at the time of his freshman year in 74, or what we believe to be his freshman year, there's only one tight end at UTEP that is there for 4 years in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so assuming that this is MacGruber, who goes by the name of Dean Alcorn at the time. So if anyone's wondering what MacGruber's real name is, it is Dean Alcorn. But I digress. They are 4-5 midway, or at the tail end of the 74 season, looking to become bowl eligible for the first time in years. And they get absolutely annihilated over their last 2 games, and they fail to make the playoffs. And then over the next 3 years at college, they go 3-31.
Wow.
I mean, that's going to scar anybody.
And also, he didn't get with his wife quite yet. So he was not with Casey. Casey chose Dieter von Kumpf instead of him. So he lost the lady, and his football career kind of went down the toilet because his team could only win 3 games in 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible record. And on top of that, I mean, being a starting tight end for a D1 school, I think every player that plays in D1 has aspirations to go into the next level. I mean, I can't imagine anyone that doesn't want to go to the NFL. There's only one guy from UTEP that was drafted in the 70s. I mean, that's got to stick with MacGruber.
Yeah. And so do you think you can't be a 5'11", 150 tight end. So he was pretty big back then. He had to have been at least 220.
Yeah, he must have been to be able to be a tight end on the line. Yeah.
What was his best year? He had one year where he had a decent amount of. He had 370 yards one year, correct?
He did. So he averaged 11 games per season, and then his best year was 76. He had 14 receptions for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I mean, that's not bad. He had 5 touchdowns overall, correct?
He did. I mean, those are very MacGruber numbers.
It's like so. I think he seems like a guy that would put up decent numbers on a terrible team, but horrible numbers on a great team.
That's fairly accurate. That's probably how he is later in life as well.
Now, okay, so there's a speech he makes later on in the movie about Casey and Dieter, what happened to them in college, and I'm going to read it right now, and I want us to do the math, okay? So I'm going to read this. So there's a scene in the movie where we learn that MacGruber, his wife was killed by Dieter von Kumpf, but it turns out that Casey was originally with Dieter, and then they broke up. So here's the speech. To this day, I have no idea why Dieter hates me. We actually all went to college together between 1974 and 78, we're assuming. Believe it or not, we were very close friends. Then after graduation, he got engaged to her. He asked me to be his best man, and right about that time, I started banging her and mowing her box. She was actually the first person I felt comfortable enough around to let her eat out my butt. Anyway, shortly thereafter, she left him for me. She was actually carrying his child at the time. I asked her to terminate it, obviously, so we could start fresh, and she agreed. We were so in love, and he took that from me.
Oh my God. I gotta apologize to our listeners for laughing in the background of that. Every line in this movie just makes me laugh hysterically.
Now, go back and watch the clip and just watch at Ryan Phillippe's slow descent into being uncomfortable. At first he thinks it's kind of nice, and then he starts just being appalled by what happened.
It turns so drastically. And it's all right there in the middle of that when it's about that time. I started banging her and mowing her box. I mean, it's so awful.
And they're
becoming
so terrible. And also, before he tells the story, Vicky St. Elbow, played by Kristen Wiig, who should be wearing costumes in every movie ever made. She's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. He's like, 1 or 2. And she's like, shut up. He's like, 2 then. And she just is like, you cad. And then she walks strutting away. Like, she's obviously going to take that's what they said in the commentary. But it's such a weird scene. Now, I want to say something real quick. I listened to the commentary of this. And Jorma, the director, he's one of the guys from Lonely Island. He wrote for Saturday Night Live. He took a sip of beer every time they said Mac or MacGruber. And he got pretty toasted by the end of it. And by the end of it, he had to use the restroom really bad. And so he left, and he just made another guy talk for the whole time because he couldn't sit around there anymore, bearing it. I thought that was pretty funny. That
is great. I think I read that in somewhere as well, that he ended up drinking roughly 4 beers.
Yeah, and he's a little guy. Like, whatever. He's probably he hadn't eaten much, and he's probably $150, 150, so like 160 pounds. So, I mean, 4 beers in the span of, this is a very short movie, by the way. With credits, it's probably, with credits, it's 90 minutes. So it's probably
90-ish, yeah.
Yeah, it's an 85-minute movie. But they had a $10 million budget on this. That's it. And they shot it in 28 days. What would this be like as an AD for you? 28 days, $10 million budget.
I think it'd be pretty chaotic. It'd be tough. The production value of this movie is surprisingly really solid.
Yeah.
Nice. Jorma and Will Forte wanted this to be